Is this the dagger?
G'day guys, JB here, and we are well and truly into the month of December now, and we are 7 weeks through the 25-26 NBA season. Things are really starting to hot up. There are some serious trade talks going around, and we are really starting to see which teams are going to be about it and which teams just really aren't and have done nothing but either extend players or, fall by the wayside really quickly. There have been some guys that have stepped up in some really poor performing teams, and I'm happy to highlight them as we go through, but there are some real run-of-the-mill substandard performances going on. Of course, there are some surprise packets, and there are a few teams that have started to fluctuate a little bit more, which could be concerning as the season starts to pick up, but there is still plenty of action going on around the association. So let's get into it. I'll get into my Week 7 review for the 25-26 NBA season. As we always do, we start in the East and we go alphabetically. The Atlanta Hawks are 1-2 weekly record. They're now 14-11 overall, 3 games above 500, and they are now 9th in the East. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, their best player on the week, 22.7 points, 4.7 rebounds, 2.7 assists, 1.3 steals and 1.7 turnovers, shot 48% from the field, 38.5 from deep and 83.3 from the free throw line. And for Atlanta, this is a prime example of how open the East is. When they have 2 or 3 really good weeks, they sit there as a top 4 team in the conference. When they have a bad couple of games or they have a bit of a losing streak, they manage to fall by the wayside, and that's exactly what is happening for them here. The positive being that they are above 500. I have a lot more faith in them as a 9th seed than I do someone like a Chicago, who's currently sitting closer to 4-5 games below 500. So there are still some positives there. Of course, Jalen Johnson having a really breakout season, and they're doing all of this without Dyson Daniels. You wonder whether they're going to become a part of trade talks, particularly with Giannis Antetokounmpo available. Don't know whether that happens, but I think they need to capitalise a little more on their length and defence to try and really grow that record. But again, 9th in the conference and 3 games above 500. There's still plenty of work for them to do, but they're in a pretty comfortable spot. To the Boston Celtics, who have had a really good run. They've had a really surprising run in the eyes of many, but they have plenty of talent on their roster, and that's exactly why they're getting the job done. A 4-0 record on the week. They're now 15-9 overall, a spot that not many people thought they would be. They thought, well, I at least thought they were going to be a playoff team. Some people thought they would be close to the play-in. Many questioning whether it'd be worth Jason Tatum even coming back, but right now 3rd in the conference, 15-9 overall, and you would have to think the conversations around Jason Tatum's return are a lot better than they were a few weeks ago. Derek White with a really good week, and it's probably crucial that he has stuck around. When you look at the age and ability of all the players that they have got rid of, Derek White probably fits smack bang in what they needed to do. 24.5 points, 4 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 0.5 steals and 1.3 blocks on 3.5 turnovers, 51.4% from the field, 40.8% from deep and 80% from the free throw line. When you couple that with the inclusion of someone like Walsh, who has seen the Celtics record really grow since he was included into the lineup, a capable scorer, a capable defender, you factor in that the likes of a Jaylen Brown are playing to an all-star level once again, and you have a pretty decent Celtics side. They just seem to find a way. Joe Mazzulla, really good coach, that's been proven. Brad Stevens has been a really good basketball person, whether he's got the board in his hands or he's working in the executive's office for the better part of a decade now, particularly at the NBA level. Was proven at college as well. Boston just have that formula. They've been able to really strike it for the last 10 years. That's why they do have a title run and have multiple deep playoff runs as well. And surprisingly, despite it all, it looks like they might do similar again this year. Over to Brooklyn, and their season is done, but they have had a couple of nice weeks. 2-1 weekly record just gone. They're still 13th in the conference, and they are 11 games back, 6-17 from 500. Clowney, again, their best player on the week, 19.7 points, 5.7 rebounds, 1.7 assists on 1.3 blocks to go, 1.7 turnovers, 46.2% from the field, 50% from deep, 85.7% from the free throw line. But they have had some positives. Michael Porter Jr. for me is going to be an all-star, or should be an all-star level player out there in the East. That's how well I think his season's gone. Started out rough, but has really lifted up. Someone like a Noah Clowney trying to prove their worth in this league, and they're doing it without most of their key players. But, I mean, they're out of playoff contention, but they still have some positives coming out of there. And again, I think Michael Porter Jr., for me, would be an all-star selection this year. Another team that is now out of playoff contention is the Charlotte Hornets. They're officially 10 games back, and it's going to be really tough for them to recover, particularly with the lack of consistency they have in their lineup and a lack of experience that they also have in their lineup. A 1-2 weekly record, now 7-17 overall, 12th in the conference. Con Knippel continues to be one of the leading Rookie of the Year candidates. He's going to struggle to take that top gong, but he's certainly going to be in the conversation. 16 points, 3.7 rebounds, 5 assists, 0.7 steals and 0.3 blocks on 2.7 turnovers this week. 41.5% from the field, 32% from deep, and perfect from the free throw line. A lack of experience, consistent injuries, inconsistent lineups. It's always going to be a long run for Charlotte, and, no surprise, once again, it's happening this year. Speaking of inconsistent, that is the Chicago Bulls, and while there were a lot of positives in the offseason when they signed, certainly bartered with to get Josh Giddey to sign a contract, there has been little to no consistency in their game plan all year, and they are, well and truly sitting in, if they're going to be anywhere, play-in contention. 0-3 on the week, 9-14 overall, 11th in the conference. Giddey, their best player on the week, 18.3 points, 7 rebounds, 7.3 assists, 0.7 steals and 0.7 blocks on 4 turnovers. Shot 47.4 from the field, 36.4 from deep, and 75% from the free throw line. Kobe White has been inconsistent, which really hasn't helped. Some of the other guys earlier in the year, in like a Kevin Huerter, and there's another guy from Europe. What is his name? Escape me right now. This is the worst time to get it. He has been consistent as well. Vucevic has been consistent at times as well this year, but they're just not putting it all together at once. I mean, there was a lot of hope for Chicago after Giddey's performance at the end of the year and the run they had, but they just haven't been able to transfer it this year, and right now they look like the same old Chicago. So there's some big things that are going to have to happen there. Do they sign Kobe White? Do they get rid of him? What do you do with Vucevic when he's your one constant? Look, I don't know exactly what they're going to do, but the Bulls just seem to be finding a way to sail back up that river without a paddle. The Cleveland Cavaliers, and here's another example of the East being so tight that it's hard to determine exactly what's going on. A 1-2 weekly record, they're 14-11 overall, and they actually have the jump on Atlanta. They are 8th in the conference, and I'll harp on it once again. The reason they're 8th is because of this guy on screen right here, another massive year. Donovan Mitchell played in 3 games this week, 30 points, 3.7 rebounds, 5.3 assists, 1.3 steals on 0.3 blocks to go with 3.7 turnovers. You'll be noticing the inefficiencies creeping into Mitchell's game. You've got to look at the fact he is taking on more of a workload. The more possessions you have, the more likely you are to be turning the basketball over. 46.4% from the field, 34.4 from deep, 88.2 from the free throw line. And again, Cleveland just aren't performing to the level that was expected. I mean, this is a team that went 64-18 last year. For them to do this at this point, they're going to have to win 50 games, and they're going to have to lose 7 games. A 50-7 run is what the Cavs are going to need from here if they're going to go and equal their record from last year. It's clearly not going to happen. Injuries, they certainly need to hurry up and fix themselves. Consistency in lineup, that needs to fix themselves. Whether it's just the change in the way the East is this year, I'm not too sure. I don't think Cleveland would be too affected by it. Someone like a Ty Jerome not being on their bench is clearly showing an issue because they're not able to generate that second lot of offense. But it's a really interesting one here in Cleveland. Again, I think Mitchell's been one of the standout performers this year, and I'm talking a top 5 player in the league. The issue is that the team around him doesn't necessarily support that conversation, which is a real shame because he's having another big year. Just seems to be the story of his career. But Cleveland, they're still sitting around that playoff playing area. They're underwhelming compared to what we thought they would be. So it'll be interesting to see exactly how they perform heading into Christmas and certainly throughout the rest of December. Over to Detroit, who continue to be the number 1 seed at the top of the East. Things are getting a little tighter in that top 3 there. You're talking Boston, you'll be talking New York, and Toronto. We're starting to find out where they're going to be as well. I don't think the Pistons are going to run the table as much as was first suspected a couple of weeks ago, but they're certainly still going to be thereabouts. They're good enough, in my opinion, to be the competitor that comes out of the East. A 2-1 record, 19-5 overall, as I mentioned, the top seed in the East. Cade Cunningham with a quieter week, and it certainly leads credence to performance over the last couple of weeks. He's tired, there's no doubt about it, but he's still trying to produce where he can. 23 points, 5.7 rebounds, 9.3 assists, 1.3 steals and 0.7 blocks on 2 turnovers. 41.7% from the field, 28.6% from deep, and 95.8% from the free throw line. Cade's starting to understand now that he does need to get other people involved, and I think the rest of his team's starting to understand that we can have this massive production out of Cade Cunningham, but we can't afford to burn out our leader. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to string any success together. Now, look, they do sit as the number 1 seed in the East right now. That's great. That's awesome. But you've got to find consistency in lineup. You've got to be able to find support. And when you see who's starting to chase them now and the amount of team that they're able to provide, granted, I don't think Detroit are as deep as other teams, but some of their key pieces are really good at what they do, whether they're able to come off the bench and score, whether they're able to play some defense, whether they're able to get around the rim and get some boards, play well in, from an interior standpoint. They've got those pieces. It's just the consistency in their whole lineup that then becomes a concern at the top of the table, because when you compare it to New York, even to an extent to Boston, and certainly the top half of Toronto, there might be a couple of questions that can be asked. But for Detroit, they sit number 1 right now. They're running pretty nicely. It's a matter of whether they can keep this up. To Indiana, who are still 12 games below 500, but are starting to show a little bit more consistency and just some fire in the belly to suggest that, hey, we can still cause some problems on our night. We're too far back to really do anything. We can still cause some problems on our night. 2-1 weekly record, 6-18 overall. They are the second last team in the East. Siakam continues to play really well. If this team was winning games, no one would question his ability as an all-star this year. For the week, 27.3 points, 6.3 rebounds and 3 assists to go with 1.3 steals on 2 turnovers. Shot 49.2% from the field, 56.3% from deep, and 76.5% from the free throw line. Again, they're not winning games, so he doesn't get the credit, but he's been having a really nice year. We'll see what the Pacers can do. Again, just feel they're way too far back to have any impact on this season. Over to Miami, who had started hot at one point there, was sitting, top 3 in the East. They've had a couple of bad weeks, some inconsistent weeks, and at 14-10, they only sit really 1 game ahead or half a game ahead of the likes of Cleveland and Atlanta. So that sort of speaks about how this conference is playing out this year. As I mentioned, didn't win a game this week. It's 14-10 overall, now currently 6th. Bam Adebayo, their best player for me on the week. 18 points, 9.7 rebounds, 2.3 assists, a steal, and 0.7 blocks on 1.7 turnovers. 53.5% from the field, 23.1% from deep, and 62.5% from the free throw line. Again, much like a lot of other teams, there needs to be some consistency in their lineup, and injuries playing a key factor as well. The whole idea that they don't have an absolute number 1 on offense probably does hurt them as well, because when it comes down to it, you still need to find a guy who's going to get you a score. I know it's a much more team-orientated game in the year 2025, and certainly for the 25-26 season, but when you get a breakdown in offense, you just need a guy, get you the ball, hey, go and score for us, go and get this done. They've got some capable players. Norman Powell's a guy that can actually go and get a bucket. Andrew Wiggins has shown that occasionally he can go and do it. Tyler Hero, when he's on the floor, can get it done as well. Harquez is really breaking out this 3rd season after a sophomore slump. And I think Bam certainly has plateaued as a player, but there are still moments where they can get it done. It's just that when that team ethos is not working for them at the moment, they're not delivering. So if they get back to that, then they'll be fine. Other than that, they're going to have to find someone that's willing to break out and get the job done. Over to Milwaukee, who continue to slide, and that's a real concern, because if they're not maintaining anything, that's going to be a real struggle for them to keep Giannis Antetokounmpo. They are now 5 games back from 500. 1-2 weekly record, they're 10th in the conference. They are still somehow a little more adjusted than Chicago, which really isn't saying too much. Kevin Porter Jr. in the 3 games played this week, 26 points, 4.3 rebounds, 7.3 assists, 2.7 steals and 0.3 blocks on 4 turnovers, 51.5 from the field, 55% from deep, and 90.5 from the free throw line. So when you factor in that someone like a Kevin Porter Jr., someone like an AJ Green, someone like a Ryan Rollins can be handy on their support. When you look at the fact that Miles Turner is another key contributor to this team, when they're playing really consistently and playing really good basketball alongside a healthy and fit Giannis, you're having a different conversation around this team. That's totally understandable, because you have one of the 3 best players on the planet healthy with you there as well. I just don't know how this team is going to function as a team and a connected offense, and certainly a capable defense if he's not there, because the signs aren't promising whatsoever. So we'll see exactly how that's going to unfold. Are some of these players going to be involved in a potential trade to try and lure someone back in? I don't know. There's a chance they're going to have to end up with a bottom pick. It's about the only way that they're going to be able to get to do it and do anything moving forward. The Giannis decision is the ultimate decision, and the fallout from that will ultimately determine the fate of this team this year and, well, certainly into the future. Over to the Knicks, who have really started to improve their record now. They are 13-1 at home. Now, just to make that clear, 13-1 at home. They haven't travelled yet. When they start to really hit the road, that's when we'll start to see where they're at. So if they're 13-1 at home, that means that they're what? 3-6 on the road. So let that just be a factor when we look at how the Knicks are shaping up right now. 3-1 weekly record, 16-7 overall right now. They're getting towards 10 games above 500, which is a great safety net for when they hit the road. And they're second in the East. Jalen Brunson, really big week, and he's playing really well. In his 4 games, 26 points, 2 rebounds, 7.3 assists to go with a steal on 1.8 turnovers, 44.2% from the field, 31% from deep, and 84.4% from the free throw line. But the carrot that's dangling right now is a 3-6 road record. 13-1 at home is awesome. You've got to be able to win at home, especially if you get that home court advantage in the playoffs. That's great. But if you're only winning a third of your games on the road, keeping in mind that you are potentially going to have to play a maximum of 3 games on the road every time, sure, if your home record's good enough, you're probably going to scrape through 6 games every series. Nice. Awesome. Good work. You know, you might even scrape through it on a 4-1 series, depending on how lucky you are. But you have to be able to win on the road. The Knicks, when they start getting a few more road games on, are going to be a far better test. They're sitting great right now, but you've got to win on the road. And if they're going to win a title, if they're going to compete out of the East, they've got to win on the road. And that's just a question we don't have an answer to right now for New York. We do have an answer for Orlando, though, and that is with the guy on screen right now, who is going to be out up to 4 weeks with a high ankle sprain, more than likely a syndesmosis injury. But for Orlando, a 1-2 weekly record despite that, 14-10 overall for them, and that shows you how crowded it is, 5th through, well, 9th in this conference, or 5th through at least 8th. 14-10 overall, they are 5th, and they were starting to make a run, and they haven't really had 2 seasons yet where Banchero and Wagner have been able to be healthy. They're going to be thankful for Desmond Bane. There's no doubt about that, and Banchero's going to have to step up. But Wagner still with a really nice week despite that injury taking him out for the next month. 21.3 points, 4 rebounds, 3.3 assists, 1.3 steals, and 3 blocks on 0.7 turnovers. Again, efficient, has been for quite a while, has always been able to make a statement. 55.8 from the field, 54.5 from deep, and 76.9 from the free throw line. What Orlando do in this next 4 weeks is probably going to be the make or break point of their season. They need to be a 500 team. They need to win as many as they lose. They need to at least sit above 500. If they can do that, when Wagner returns, there's a little more production that you can get out of them. There's a little more confidence instilled into them. But you're not going to see a consistent gameplay out of Wagner for a couple of weeks until after his injury, until he gets comfortable, until he gets back into game fitness and game flow. Desmond Bane's going to have to step up at this point. Banchero's going to really have to scruff this team by the neck and take the lead. Orlando can be fine, but because of that finite line in the East right now, they can't be too far off. If they're 10 or 15% off on any given night, they could fall, and that could really kill their record and any momentum that they've built in the last couple of weeks. Over to Philadelphia, they have been recovering as well, and the team that's just starting to try and make a couple of runs here or there. They've had a really nice week. 3-1, 13-10 overall. They're now 7th in the East. Tyrese Maxey just continues to make his case as one of the all-NBA players this season. He's certainly up there in contention for me. He's undoubtedly an all-star. It's a matter of which all-NBA team he wants to put himself on, and in turn, depending on team fortunes, where does he factor into the MVP race this year? For the week, 27.5 points, 4.5 rebounds, 5.3 assists to go with 3 steals and 1.3 blocks on 2.3 turnovers. Shot 46.2 from the field, 43.3 from deep, and 92.9 from the free throw line. Paul George actually having a bit of a contribution this week, which is something I wanted to touch on a little bit with how they're going to work in someone like a Paul George, and in particular when he's getting back on that floor and eventually contributing, how Joel Embiid is going to work here. Because these guys are clearly out of the picture as far as leadership's concerned. There's no doubt about it. Someone like a Maxey can't be playing this well. A VJ Edgecombe can't show the hope that he's had. And all of a sudden you go, yep, we're going to revert back to the old guard. You can't do that anymore. It's just not going to happen. Maxey's clearly the most dynamic player in the open floor in the league, whether that's speed, whether that's lateral movement, whether that's quickness, whether that's getting to the rim, whether that's taking a three-point shot, transition or otherwise, and just the defensive ability he brings as well, which comes naturally with his athleticism. You have to factor that in as the number one option. Now, because he's so far advanced in a lot of those areas, these other guys in an Embiid who can manage his moments, manage his spots, Paul George who can still get it done because he has the size about him, you can utilise that and get something done for your team, but it's a matter of how you find that balance. I don't know how they're going to do it. That's going to be the ultimate question. But a really nice week there for Philadelphia. A nice week for Tyrese Maxey. Let's see exactly what can happen for the Sixers moving forward. Over to the Toronto Raptors, who are 15-10 and 14th and 4th in the conference after a 1-3 record. That should really speak volumes of exactly how we're starting to see teams move up and down the chain as far as the conference is concerned. Scotty Barnes with another nice week. He's going to be in all-star conversations along with Brandon Ingram this year. 20.5 points, 8 rebounds, 7.3 assists, 1 steal and 1.8 blocks on 3.3 turnovers. Shot 49.2 from the field, 33.3 from deep and 80% from the free throw line. It's a matter of what exactly Toronto want to be. They are very top-heavy. They have some nice reserves, but they're not great rounded reserves. But at the same time, you can't afford for those top players to be off by 5%. If Pirtle's not locking in, if Quickly's not locking in, if RJ Barrett's not locking in, and we know Brandon Ingram can be fluctuating, then that has to play on the mind of Scotty Barnes. Barnes is clearly the man on this team. He's been an all-star before, and he's clearly the guy the franchise wants to work around, but you've got to be able to support him the best that you can. He's going to bring it on both ends of the floor each and every night. He's going to be an all-defensive candidate this year. So how do you support that endeavour to really try and grow this team, and in turn maybe entice a couple of players to turn up as well? Because with the roster they have right now, they're certainly not going to compete anytime soon, and we know they have won a championship in the last 10 years. Not saying that's great championship pedigree, but there clearly has to be a want there for another title. When you haven't had one before, you really want it, and then when you've only had the one, you need another one. So let's see exactly what Toronto can do from here. I'm liking what Barnes is doing this year, but again, just the volatility between essentially 3rd to 8th right now in this conference is wild. So we'll see exactly how things continue to pan out. Toronto need to get a streak on. And we head on over to the worst team in the NBA Eastern Conference. And that is quite simply the Washington Wizards. 15th overall. 0-3 on the week. Their best player, CJ McCollum. 20 points, 1.7 rebounds, 3.3 assists to go with 0.3 steals and 0.7 blocks on 3.7 turnovers. 45.7% from the field, 37% from deep, 88.9 from the free throw line. Their defense suffered tremendously without Alex Sarr. Let's keep it simple. They're the worst team in the East. They're not doing anything successful, and the guy on screen really needs to hurry up and find somewhere else to play because, my lord, we can't have him suffer like this in Washington. Over to the West, 2-1 weekly record for this team. They've moved up to 11th after I thought they were only 2 or 3 weeks ago about to write their season off, but they have started to try and turn the page a little bit. The Dallas Mavericks, 9-16 overall. Cooper Flagg continues to lead the way for Rookie of the Year. He's had a nice little rejuvenation. 19 points, 4.3 rebounds, 2.3 assists, a steal and a block on 2.3 turnovers. 53.8 from the field, 20% from deep and 93.3 from the free throw line. Dallas, again, they've just got these injury concerns that you feel if they can get them right, they might swing towards 500, but they also have these concerns where their players get injured and they very well could swing to be 10 games below 500 and their season's done. So they're potentially 1 or 2 injuries away from doing really well, but they're also 1 or 2 injuries away from just wasting the year. That's the seesaw and the fine line that they're walking right now. There's currently been talks about Kyrie Irving being traded. That to me would be a very interesting move, because that speaks that you then are getting ready to get rid of Anthony Davis, who is also now a part of more trade talks. It's not a shock there. He hasn't moved, but of course, any time Anthony Davis is around and there's a trade conversation, he just seems to be the guy. But that's this fine line that Dallas walk on. If there's another injury and that team slumps, then they're probably going to clear it out. But if they start making a bit of a run, they start to believe in themselves, people come back and they try and push for a playoff run. So it'll be very interesting to see what they do. Cooper Flagg's clearly the man, and clearly their number one priority, but just fortunes of this team so paper thin right now that it's really hard to gauge exactly what way they're now going to go, because they're sitting in a playing situation realistically. So we'll see how this continues to pan out. When you talk about injuries, I mean, this is a team that certainly has had them, and a team that certainly is suffering with its third best player out with injuries, but it is currently 11 games above 500, so credits are well and truly in the bag for the Denver Nuggets, who went 3-0 this week, third in the conference. And while Nikola Jokic had another blinder of a week, I thought consistently across their 3 games that Jamal Murray was their best player. And I mean, you've only got to look at some of these numbers. It's ridiculous, the efficiency he played at from the guard position. 36.3 points, 4.7 rebounds, 7 assists, 1.3 steals, and 0.3 blocks on 1.7 turnovers. Shot 62.1 from the field, 61.5% from deep. So even if he didn't go inside the paint, he'd have been as effective a scorer as anybody in the league. And 91.7 from the free throw line. So when he was contested illegally, according to the officials, he certainly made up for it and was able to get the job done. Denver in a really interesting scenario right now, because they're also starting to get some of these guys that they traded in for to play some really consistent minutes. Now, they're competing in a conference, so on the other side of it, where the best team looks like it may not lose another game for another month, and there isn't a real loss in sight for them, which is really hard to compete against when the conversation is around, hey, it's not about how many games they win, it's about how many games do they set the all-time record by. That's a hard hill to climb up, but for Denver, they also have probably the best player in the league. He's certainly one of the 3 best players. He's certainly going to be up there in MVP conversations again in Jokic. Yeah, it's really strange. Denver sitting, as I mentioned, not on a knife's edge. They've got a few, weapons up their sleeves, so to speak, but they're just playing in a conference right now where it's clear that the number 1 team in the league sits atop their conference and isn't going to get caught anytime soon. So I don't really know what to make of the Nuggets. They can be a competitor. There's no doubt about it. I think they can be a real challenger. But for me, it's almost like everyone in the West is playing for second place, which is never really healthy. Over to Golden State, who went 500 on the week. They're 1 game above 500 and currently sit 8th in the conference. And you're not joking. Your eyes aren't deceiving you. I'm not trying to play a prank. Their best player, who played in all 4 games this week, was Pat Spencer. I just wanted to let that sit for a little bit so you can actually understand what I've just said. 16 points, 4 rebounds, 5.8 assists, 1 steal, and 1.8 turnovers. I mean, I've got to give the guy credit. He's efficient. And was a really nice contributor on the offensive side of the ball for them. 59.1% from the field, 75% from deep, and 100% from the free throw line. But for Golden State, you're only 1 game above 500. I don't know whether Pat Spencer, considering the guys that you've put time into, is the guy that you should be relying on. Your investment from your other key players who wanted to be something on this team just isn't there. Now, Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry certainly showing their age right now. They're not performing to the level that you would expect. They're going to struggle to remain in all-star contention as other guys in this league continue to perform with their teams winning games. So it's just a real concern. I mean, as I said, I think everyone's running second to only 1 team in the West right now, and that's just become really, really evident. So my motivation to really converse about the Western Conference is tough. But I'm looking from a team health perspective. Pat Spencer can't be one of your leading options in any given week. I will accept Jonathan Kuminga. I will not accept Pat Spencer. Great week, played well, no issues with that. But with the fortunes of your future riding, unless we're going to see a month and a half of this out of Spencer, Golden State really need to open their eyes. They really need to look somewhere else because it just doesn't do it. For the Houston Rockets, again, a team that's almost 10 games above 500, so will have some flexibility. And they're going to be a competitor. They're going to be a semi-finalist. They might be a conference finalist. But I just don't think it's... Again, there's one team that's clearly ahead of everybody in this conference. It's really simple. 2-1 weekly record though for the Rockets. 4th now in the conference. And Kevin Durant with a really nice week. 26.3 points, 2.7 rebounds, 6.3 assists, I should say. 0.7 steals and 0.7 blocks on 2 turnovers. Shot 58.5 from the field, 44.4 from deep, and 100% from the free throw line. And the thing with Houston is they're showing consistently every week that they have some elite first options, some quality second and third options, and plenty of good rotations on both sides of the ball and on the glass to be a team that can just cause a nightmare whenever they need to. Kevin Durant at worst is a bailout option. A pretty good bailout option if you ask me. Şengün's proving again to be one of the more consistent centers in the league on certainly the offensive side of the ball. You've got Thompson as well, who's a consistent defender. You've also got someone like a Reed Shepherd who has come on where they needed him to. And Steven Adams, just a culture guy, continues to get the job done and working hard. And working hard seems to be the flavour of this team because they are dominating the offensive boards this season. And offensive boards, to me, are certainly more important than defensive boards. Not only are you stopping the opposition from getting a possession, you're giving the ball back to yourself and giving yourself a chance at second opportunities. So if Houston can keep that up, they're going to be able to outwork a lot of different teams. As I said, the only issue is they're currently in the Western Conference, and the leader of the West is, well, a long way out in front. Short and sweet for the Clippers, a 1-2 weekly record. They're 12 games below 500. They're slow, they're tired, and they're not doing anything productive. Harden with a nice week, and it's going to be really strange. I've actually fallen into the Harden camp of, probably get him somewhere. It's just a matter of him actually accepting his role, which is the issue that he's going to have. He's not going to accept that role until it's too late, and then he's going to be unproductive because you can't play him on a defensive side of the ball. If he accepted that, he'd probably be somewhere else. He could be playing as a second, third option. He could be on a title contending team. But until he does that, he's not going to go anywhere. Nice week though, 26.3 points, 3.7 rebounds, 7.3 assists, 2.3 steals, and 0.7 blocks on 3 turnovers, 49.1 from the field, 34.6 from deep, 84.2 from the free throw line. The Clippers are 12 games back. They don't own any of their draft picks, and it's not looking really positive unless they're willing to trade out a bunch of old guys for a bunch of potential young guys who doesn't matter how they perform because they don't have any draft picks anyway. The Clippers, they're up a creek, they've got no paddle. And then you look at the other side of the ball. And you look at the Lakers, who are currently sitting second in the conference with the same record as Denver, with very similar situation to Denver as far as what their second and third options are going to be able to provide and how valuable they are. They just happen to be running in a race against Usain Bolt, whilst just being the local guy who goes for a park run. That's honestly the difference I think we're seeing in the West. But a really nice week by Austin Reeves, who has really stepped up. He's going to earn a contract here. And, he's going to prove to be pivotal for the Lakers moving forward. 30.3 points, 4 rebounds, 7.3 assists, 0.3 steals and 0.3 blocks on 3.7 turnovers. 45.5 from the field, 40% from deep, and 83.8 from the free throw line. The one thing that Austin Reeves brings that Luka Doncic doesn't, and everyone talks about the bulk possessions, you've got to look at true shooting and what he does per possession and everything like that. The efficiency of Austin Reeves is what makes him as valuable as anyone else on that team. Yep, he's been given a lot more of a license. He's been able to grow and develop his game, all of that sort of stuff. I give full credit to his development. But the big thing that I give him most credit for is how efficient he can be with the basketball on a team with Luka Doncic. Because Luka, high volume guy, but he can be a little expensive as far as his efficiency is concerned, and I don't care what anyone says, he's not a good defender. So Reeves isn't a good defender either, but he's a more passable defender. When you factor that in, he complements DeAndre Ayton well. He clearly has played around LeBron James, so he knows how to play around Luka Doncic, and that's why he becomes one of the better complementary pieces in the league. And he's going to be an all-star this year. In fact, I would say he's going to be an all-star ahead of a LeBron James. And there are other guys on other teams that he's probably having a better year than that they wouldn't consider. Now, the spotlight itself says that he is because he's in Los Angeles. But when you stack them up player to player and took their jerseys off, you wouldn't actually consider it. But Reeves is having a pretty good year. You can credit that to Luka, by all means. But you've also got to give the guy credit for his own production and certainly his own efficiency. The Memphis Grizzlies have played some really nice basketball over the last couple of weeks and pretty much turned it around at the point where I said they either need to tank out and get rid of things or they need to start playing and start being competitive. 2-1 weekly record. They're 5-1 over the last 2 weeks. This is the kind of consistent week that a team like Chicago could only dream of. They're now 11-13. They're now 9th in the conference. And they're just trying to build something here, which is really nice to see. Cam Spencer, a good example of that. 16.7 points, 3 rebounds, 6.3 assists, 1.7 steals on 2 turnovers, 60.7% from the field, 50% from deep, and perfect from the free throw line. It does circle back around to a similar situation with Golden State. If Pat Spencer is your player of the week, you're not doing as well as you think. Again, I'm not shocked at this though with Memphis because they haven't been doing as well as some people thought they would be. Personally feel they can still be a playoff team if everything starts to hit right. And considering that everyone's playing for second place in the West, it's not going to matter too much how many bullets that you fire. The only issue is there are a couple of teams that have lifted, that are above them, that are going to be consistently above them, because they just have a higher level of consistency out of their star players. I'm talking around your Phoenixes and your Minnesotas and even your San Antonios are going to consistently be there. I mean, obviously the Lakers, Denver and Houston, and of course OKC. But when you look at Memphis there, you're looking at someone like a Ja Morant who's struggling to get on the floor and culture-wise. Jaren Jackson Jr. is not producing where he has been previously. I've liked what Jalen Wells has done. I've even liked what Zach Edey's done. But you've just got to look at who's producing what and to what level they're at as to where the team is going to sit. And that's why Memphis sitting at 9th, kind of feels right. It's just a matter of seeing whether they can overproduce from that and deliver something. Of course, an injury or two, players out, changes this whole scenario once again. But to be fair, Memphis haven't been the healthiest team this year, and if they can start to put that together, 500 team, they start to become a bit of a worry and a bit of a matchup issue for some teams. Here's another team that is just starting to prove that they can move a little bit here. 3-1 weekly record, 15-9 overall, currently 6th in the West. That is the Minnesota Timberwolves. So they're having a bit of a run and a season similar to that of Boston, but you're noticing Boston a little bit more because they were expected to be poor and started poor. Anthony Edwards is having another good season. He's going to be an all-star. He's going to be around about those All-NBA conversations by the end of the year. But to be fair, his teammate Ian Julius Randle is probably going to make a conversation around an all-star selection as well, at least in my eyes. 27.5 points, 6.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists to go, 0.8 steals, and 1.5 blocks on 4.3 turnovers. And when you look at the overall production, it's a pretty high turnover rate there for an Anthony Edwards. 54.4 from the field, 45.8% from deep, and 86.2 from the free throw line. As we know, focused more on jump shooting last year, which in turn has helped him as far as his overall versatility on the offensive end. But it's just a bit of a concern for Minnesota here. I mean, they're trying to get someone to become more of a primary ball handler because you need to get the ball out of Ant's hands to really progress into the offense. Someone like McDaniels isn't it. Mike Conley is a little bit older. Someone like a DiVincenzo is certainly more of a scoring guard, so you have to factor that in. Obviously, you've got Naz Reid, you've still got Rudy Gobert, you've still got Julius Randle, but it's just someone to come in and conduct that offense maybe a little bit better that would really help this team. There were suggestions around a Chris Paul. I don't like the fit. He's old, and I can't imagine the personality clash you're going to have with your young and up-and-coming star in Anthony Edwards, but it sort of speaks volumes to what they need at that point guard position. Someone who can defend, who's willing to facilitate, can hit a jump shot here or there. That's really what Minnesota need right now. We'll see whether that comes about, whether that can come to fruition. But they're having a really nice, solid year. They're going to be thereabouts from, anywhere from 5 through to 8 for most of the year. Again, everyone's running second out in the West. And this is going to make my job a little bit easier because we're about to cover the worst team in basketball and the best team in basketball, and we're going to do it in about a minute. The worst team in basketball, New Orleans. Didn't win a game this week, lost all 4. They're now 3-22. They're actually 3 games back from Washington. That's how poor they've been. 15th in the conference. Trey Murphy, their best player. 27.3 points, 7.5 rebounds, 5.3 assists, 1.5 steals, and 0.3 blocks on 2 turnovers. 53.9 from the field, 30.8 from deep, 86.4 from the free throw line. They're done like a dog's dinner. On the other side of things, the Oklahoma City Thunder. 23-1 through 24 games. Undefeated again this week. First in the conference. Oh, might I add, they've also now won games without Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and Shai officially has played in less fourth quarters than he has played in fourth quarters this season. 23-1. They're first in the conference, undefeated this week. Jalen Williams is back, and hey, he was their best player on the week. 20.7 points, 4.7 rebounds, 6.3 assists, 1.3 steals and 0.3 blocks on 1.3 turnovers. Shot 54.3% from the field. Keeping in mind, he's only really been back for 2 weeks. 20% from deep, 100% from the free throw line. Oh, and the absolute best starting 5 last year that you could put on the floor, which was consistently their starting 5, hasn't played a minute together yet. Oklahoma City are that far in front in the West, I don't think it's funny. We're talking that far in front in the West, similar to Golden State 2015-16, and I think they're a far better basketball team. The Phoenix Suns. Now, they're a team that has surprised a few, and that's understandable. I thought they were going to be a bottom 5 team, but they're going to be consistently around the play-in or the playoff tournament, the play-in tournament or the playoffs this season, which is really good to see. A 1-1 weekly record, 14-10 overall, 7th in the conference. Devin Booker with an injury concern, which is a little worrying for them at the moment, but they can certainly work through it. 7th in the conference, and Dylan Brooks are consistent 2 games there. 20.5 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists on 2 turnovers. Inefficiencies across the board for the team, particularly for Dylan Brooks, though. Ultimately showing why, hey, the reason we went 1-1. 38.6 from the field, 16.7 from deep, 62.5 from the free throw line. And again, they've just got these guys that are plugging and playing all throughout the year, which is really good to see. Dylan Brooks being a key one there. Of course, people asked about his culture issues. Well, I think the culture issues are clearly well and beyond him. Everyone can see that now. We've talked about Colin Gillespie, about how impactful he has been, the way that he's played the game, the point guard position. Mark Williams has also been crucial. I mean, you've got to look at the drama that was his trade last year that just didn't unfold. Of course, you've also someone like Grayson Allen, who's proven to be a good 3-and-D guy. And keeping in mind, Jalen Green is out. The alternative guard on this team is out, and he hasn't played much. And Devin Booker's still alternating between the 1 and the 2. Not bad for a team that I thought was going to be a bottom 5. They've certainly outperformed expectations. And again, they're a real barometer team. If you're getting over Phoenix, you're pretty competitive. If you're not beating Phoenix, you probably need to go to the drawing board. That's the kind of season that they're having. To Portland, who are just starting to slip a little bit. They did start really strong, but they have started to slip a little bit, which is kind of crazy to say because despite their record, which is equal to that of the Chicago Bulls, I think they've had a better season than the Chicago Bulls. 1-3 on the week, 9-15 overall. They're 10th in the West. And Denny Avdia continues to show that, hey, if we were winning games, you'd be talking about me as an all-star. And I think statistically, he's going to start having that kind of conversation. This week, again, 26 points, 8 rebounds, 8.8 assists, 1.3 steals and 0.3 blocks on 4.3 turnovers, 49.1 from the field, 39.1 from deep, and 82% from the free throw line. What exactly are we going to see out of Portland by the end of December is the real question. Because then you've got to try and work out what they're going to do with their team and whether any of these pieces are just trying to brew up their value to get moving. Drew Holiday's not going to want to waste the back end of his career, which is what we're realistically getting to now, on a team that's not successful. Now, are there other plans at play for Drew Holiday and whether he moves? I don't know. Is this a bit of a play by Portland as well? They're seeing the talent in someone like an Avdia where they want to get him moved on and get him into a different situation. I don't know. But on the other side of it, if you're the Blazers, when you're dealing with Shaedon Sharpe, Drew Holiday, and Avdia here, you've kind of got a little bit to work with. It's a matter of how much time it's going to take to work with it. Can they stick the process through? I don't know. Can they get a couple of wins on the board and just make this record a little bit more respectable and get back to that, hey, pay attention to a stage? I don't know. In a bit of a funk there, Portland, but again, I still feel, despite their record, they've actually had a better year than a team like Chicago. Another team that is done like a dog's breakfast for the year, the Sacramento Kings, 13th in the conference, 6-18. They have been as bad as the Clippers. They are lucky that Russell Westbrook was the feel-good story and managed to work his way into this starting lineup because they've been terrible. That is about the only good story they've had, is that Westbrook has come in, played well enough to get into the starting lineup and continues to be the most competitive player. 1-2 weekly record, 6-18 overall. They're 13th in the conference. Zach LaVine, their best player this week though. 20 points, 2.7 rebounds, 1.7 assists, 1 steal and 0.7 blocks on 2 turnovers. 45.2 from the field, 45.5 from deep, and 92.3 from the free throw line. Yes, that's right. He would have been better off just taking threes this week. I always said there was not going to be an issue with Sacramento pouring in points. There was always going to be an issue stopping those points. And that's exactly where we're at with them. The Spurs keep plugging away. And this is the positive for the Spurs because they're still a couple of weeks away from Victor Wembanyama joining the team and really trying to rejig exactly what this roster looks like. 3-1 weekly record, really nice by them. 16-7, so they're almost at that safety net as well. Just think they're a game difference, and they've been without Wemby for nearly 2-3 weeks now. They're a game difference to what Denver and the Lakers are sitting at 17-6, and they're the second best teams you're looking at in basketball. That's the level of depth we're seeing out of the Spurs right now. And people really aren't appreciating that, I must admit. 5th in the conference, De'Aaron Fox, a really nice week. He has proven to be a saviour for this team, which has been tremendous for them. 24.8 points, 4.5 rebounds, 6.3 assists, 1.3 steals on 4.5 turnovers. 46.4% from the field, 40.7% from deep, and 82.8 from the free throw line. And I mean, as it sits in their injury report, Victor Wembanyama is the major out on that one there. It appears that he's going to continue to remain out for what is going to be NBA Cup week, for whatever that's worth. And Jordan McLaughlin is the other guy that's an injury concern as well. But Stephon Castle is back in the lineup. Dylan Harper is back in the lineup as well. When you factor in the consistency they're now getting out of De'Aaron Fox, Devin Vassell is still there. Harrison Barnes is still proving to be that senior experience. Champagny has been able to step up. Cornette has been able to step up. Like, these are guys that have been brewing here for a long time who just needed to be able to get some leadership and some extra pieces. Now they're starting to see it. They're realistically a team that's in consideration for the second best team in the West, and they're without arguably the best all-around basketballer on the planet right now. If he gets healthy, you never know. I still think these teams are running second, but I would rather be facing the Spurs without Victor Wembanyama than I would with Victor Wembanyama. I can assure you of that. And finally in the West, we get to the Utah Jazz. 1-2 weekly record, 8-15 overall, 12th in the conference. Keontae George, just seems like him and Lauri Markkanen are trading backwards and forwards as to who is the leader of this team, which I don't really mind in a situation they're in right now. 3 games played, 18.3 points, 3.3 rebounds, 5.7 assists, 0.3 blocks a game with 3 turnovers. Again, an inefficient week, which generally leads to the kind of run that they're having here. 36.4 from the field, 35.7 from deep, 100% from the line. A team whose record, again, I still feel doesn't reflect the fact that I think they've probably still had a better year than Chicago. And they're 1 game off Portland, who at times have looked like they're going to be an 8th seed in the West. So that just sort of speaks volumes of exactly where the Jazz are at and exactly what they're able to deliver. There's still talks about Lauri Markkanen. I think you can keep him and Keontae George doing well if you have the pieces. Then, all of a sudden you start looking like a better team. One of the injury concerns for them that is always going to prove to be a concern was always going to be when Walker Kessler went out. He's one of the elite rim protectors in the team. And when you miss him, it certainly becomes an issue. That's not saying that a Nurkic isn't a valuable centre. But I just think that he's been underutilised for most of his career. Denver cut him, keeping in mind they cut him for Nikola Jokic. I would like to have known what Denver would have looked like if they'd have kept Nurkic and been able to keep him in it, playing that reserve role if he was willing to, the same way Jokic does. Denver would have been a lot scarier team. But again, Kessler has been the big injury concern for this team, has been most of the year. Someone like a George Niang has been issued with his foot, of course, and he's been out for a real length of time. So they are missing a couple of key pieces that would boost this team, but at the same time, not expecting anything special out of them. So, yeah, the Jazz, a really interesting point of time for them. We'll see how they unfold. And that's my review for Week 7 of the 25-26 NBA season. The East really wide open. Some flaws in some of the top teams that could really prove crucial as we move forward. Meanwhile, in the West, there's a box hold of 4 teams that are playing for second place genuinely, and we've got a conference leader who is so far ahead They're probably the best team that we've seen since the 95-96 Chicago Bulls. That's as simple a statement as I can put for how dominant the Thunder have been. And yes, I'm pretty confident in putting them ahead of the Golden State Warriors of 2015-16. That's just how good they are. Anyway, guys, that's been me. That's been my Week 7 review for the 25-26 NBA season. I'm out.